say hi to everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm so excited to be back at Twin Cities Startup Week again this year. This is, I think, the third year that Hotwire's participated in a panel, and it's been really fun to kind of see this event grow and come back every year. I'm Kelsey Quickstad. I'm a vice president at Hotwire, actually based in our Minneapolis office, but we are a global communications consultancy with offices in about with 12 offices around the world. So, and we work really primarily with technology companies of all sizes, really working with them to develop the right marketing and brand strategies that really help them kind of achieve their unique business goals. And one of the things that we did earlier this year was launch what's called the Hotwire Ignite Possibilities Program, or HIPP for short, which pledged $1 million in pro bono brand marketing and public relations services to companies that are technology companies or tech-enabled organizations who are led by or support minority communities. And our goal of this program really is to help more tech and tech-enabled organizations that are working to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion through technology innovation, help them scale and succeed in today's kind of competitive tech sector. So today we've invited some of the representatives from our first cohort of our HIPP program to really talk a bit more about how they are tackling their business challenges and meeting goals through brand marketing and public relations. So I'm going to, I know it looks like Vanessa just dropped. She'll probably be back in a second, but I think we could start with some introductions, and I want you to just hear from everyone, do a little bit of an introduction and kind of introduce your company. So Jerisa, I'm going to see if you wanted to come off mute and go first and just say hello.
Thank you, Kelsey. Thank you for having us here today. So excited to talk about the HIPP program and what we've been doing so far. My name is Jerisa Blunt. I am the CEO and founder of GoFly. We do on-demand same-day delivery for fashion, beauty, and wellness retailers. We currently operate in Los Angeles, New York City, and Seattle, and we hopefully will be in a city near you very, very soon.
That sounds great. Vanessa, you want to go next? Oh. How about we go to Jay, and maybe Vanessa will come back and get audio working again.
Sure. One of the rare times I'm not the one with technical
It's bound to happen.
So, I know. It's always me. My name's Jay Hirsch, and I'm the CEO at Full Circle Fund. Full Circle Fund, we're actually a nonprofit that supports other nonprofits around the country. We find low visibility, high impact nonprofits that are led by minorities, people of color, that have great ideas, understand the challenges their communities are facing, and need some more technical and financial assistance to really achieve their mission at scale. We connect those CEOs and founders and their teams to financial resources through grants, but also what our real secret and our bread and butter is we connect them to companies, leaders at those companies that have technical skills that they want to leverage for good to help the nonprofits move their mission forward with a specific capacity challenge that they're facing. And oftentimes what we see in a lot of the nonprofits, these are tech nonprofits facing big marketing challenges. So excited to talk more about this. And also HIPP has been a huge asset for us to help reach these organizations. And Hotwire has been a big asset for us for a long time, doing speaker trainings, PR support, all sorts of different background. So we're really excited to be here and grateful to be partners with you all, Kelsey. So thanks again for having us.
All right, Vanessa, good timing. Do you want to give a little bit of an intro?
I'd love to. My name is Vanessa Verde. My name is Spanish, of course. I'm first generation Mexican immigrant from South Texas. I built a successful career predominantly in health policy, then health tech, before moving into investing, board positions, and now entrepreneurship. My co-founder and I, Leslie Ott, we share the experience of having gone from poverty to entrepreneurship, which ultimately led to the company that we're talking about today, which is Mentor. At Mentor, which is a recently co-founded company, we're redefining the concept of mentorship and the way it actually plays out. Because as we all know, we all must have somebody to help us into processes we've never been a part of. It makes the road to success easier, but many of us have never actually had a mentor. And in today's world, discrimination and bias absolutely show up, and they determine how people think mentors should look and how people define who should be mentored. So our company is redefining mentorship by leveraging technology to create an environment that fosters all sorts of mentorship models and embracing the lived experience we all have. So for us, success means a world where all women can describe their own distance traveled, just like my story, just like many of the stories on the panel, so that all of us can achieve these lives we've never dreamed of. Happy to talk.
Thanks, Vanessa. I think I'm going to go, Jay, over to you first. And I know you gave us a little bit of an overview of Full Circle Fund. Can you maybe talk a little bit about some of the recent programs that you're launching and kind of where Full Circle Fund is at from a business today?
Yeah, for sure. So primarily what we do, the core of our business, like I said, is really finding early stage entrepreneurs, social impact entrepreneurs that work in the nonprofit sector, like I said, that have a really good understanding of the challenges their communities are facing. And they have beautiful products, programs, teams that can help them address those challenges. And the nonprofits come to us and they have usually one or two specific capacity challenges that will really help them get over the edge to achieve their mission. And we really think about achieving their mission at scale. And scale can mean a million different things to a million different people. So we really understand what does impact and what does scale look like for them. And as we start to think about scale and impact, one of the first things is, especially as we're bringing corporate volunteers in to support these nonprofits, is really translating the difference between what does a social entrepreneur need versus like a corporate 500, Fortune 500 employee, and how do we act as those translators? One way that we've supported that translation is we've developed a program called our Power and Privilege program. And what that does is all of our corporate volunteers go through a specific program where we train them on their own identity, power, and privilege that they bring to the table before we put them in the relationship with our nonprofits. What this does is it helps bridge the gap. We start thinking about lived experience and learned experience. And a lot of our corporate partners have amazing learned experience, but they don't necessarily have the lived experience of the constituents that these nonprofits are trying to serve. So we really challenge them to think about the identity and the power and the privilege that they're bringing to understand that lived experience. And that's when the marketing ideas really start to come. So they can leverage, our corporate volunteers can leverage their marketing expertise. They can build go-to-market strategies, pricing structures, like B2B to B2C business models, all that kind of stuff. But how do you do that with a different lens to serve a community that you don't actually come from, you don't understand? In our Power and Privilege workshop, the program, and this is something that HIPP has really helped us think about, it helps them step into the shoes, build a little empathy, but really lean on our nonprofit leaders that understand these communities. And the combination of that lived and learned experience is what develops great programs, products that meet the needs of these constituents they're trying to serve, and ultimately really helps them meet the need of their communities. And really put social justice, racial equity, DEI in the center of the work we're doing. So we move away from the tokenization and really put the leaders from these communities as leaders that hold the power to design the programs and products with their own lived experience. So that's one example of that with our Power and Privilege program. Happy to discuss more if that's helpful as well.
That's great. And I think it gives kind of a nice sense to our audience of, a lot of the core kind of value that you bring through your work. I think, Vanessa, you mentioned it a little bit too with co-founding Mentor. If you want to talk a little bit about where Mentor is right now from a company standpoint, I believe you guys are just about to launch or close to launch, and just to give a sense of kind of where you're at, with Mentor on that journey.
Yeah, Mentor is about to launch. We're truly excited. We actually spent the first year and a half doing R&D work, and I was thinking how well you matched this panel. I actually started my professional career as the translator of a complex healthcare change that was happening in the early 90s and going around speaking to predominantly Spanish-speaking media and parts of the population in the country. And I find that is the secret sauce to connecting the dots between what you build and how and who you built it for. And so in our world, in the tech world, R&D, research and development is exactly about making sure that you have met the need of the population. Mentor specifically is dedicated to women ages 15 and up. That's a lot of different women in a lot of different communities. So when I tell you that we spent over a year really reaching into our network, and had we not actually come from low income backgrounds ourselves, it would have been extremely challenging. We would have needed people to connect the dots for us. But that is the blessing and the curse of having come from poverty, is also knowing what solutions your populations need. We are also blessed with a co-founder who is a full stack developer. So our build and our R&D time was happening at the exact same time. It is also something I think about as an investor when I look at companies and I see the amount of preparation time that they have taken to listen to the voice of the community or build a quote unquote user experience that actually matches the users they want to use the product. So whether it's nonprofit or for-profit work, I think, Jay is saying all of the message that resonates with me, certainly on the private equity side. But Mentor is, yes, about to launch. We invite everyone to be part of this community. It is the only platform out there that's as robust and as focused on women, particularly the pathways for women to have opportunity, that's out in the market globally and launching in the US immediately.
That's great that we're already connecting the dots here. Question one, I like it. It's working. Jerisa, if you just want to give us a little bit of a background, I know GoFly has had an interesting, year and a half, I think, in terms of the industry and where you play. And if you just want to give us a little bit of sense on that.
Yeah, well, we are in logistics. And so we are one of those companies that was able to grow because of the pandemic. I do remember going through that stage of talking to customers and trying to see what their needs are, also pitching to retailers. Retailers are our customer, and letting them know about our services. And it just didn't quite click for them until they were faced with a breakdown in the supply chain and understanding the importance of having different options and getting their items and products to their customers. There has been this change in shopper behavior where people want things faster, more conveniently, and also now because of COVID, in a safe way. How can they safely consume things? How can they also be able to get that instant gratification they used to get from spending hours at a mall? We also deal with a whole nother age bracket that I didn't think would be excited about this. I actually thought it would be women around my age that were busy, they were mothers, they had jobs, they had side hustles. Those were my women. But like Vanessa said, as I talked to more people and as we educated ourselves, it was those women. But we also have noticed that our clients, their shoppers are the ones that didn't grow up in the mall. And those are the people who want to consume very, very quickly. So we are in this growth phase. Sometimes painful, sometimes joyful, but it's a very beautiful phase to be in, and we're growing, and we're really understanding that from especially small businesses that want to be innovative and operate like a huge company like Amazon, we're the perfect fit for them. We're able to help them kind of just take the hassle out of their logistics. So it's been we've seen a lot of growth. I'm very happy about it. But again, like Vanessa said, we are continuing to learn about our customer and what their needs are today, because the customer today is not the same customer pre-COVID. And things are continuously changing. I mean, I think this is actually going to be a different holiday season, even from last year. Last year, everyone was waiting around, thinking things were going to happen with their regular couriers. Now, with a little bit more education, now we're dealing with a different business owner that is like, okay, last year we had delays, we had this, the supply chain was broken, we couldn't get our items on time. Now we're dealing with a different type of retailer. So I think this is going to be a continuous phase of people changing and us having to learn what their needs are.
Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting. I wanted to kind of give a moment to kind of circle back on what you guys are all touching on too, and kind of a foundation of any sort of, communications program anyways, is that full understanding of your audience and their behaviors and their motivators. And, we work with you all, and I think across clients as well too, as that really crucial first step in terms of understanding the audience. I don't know if anyone else wanted to kind of add on that, since you all did seem to touch on it a little bit too, in terms of, just underscoring that importance, but also, lessons learned or kind of anything that you've all had. It sounds like recently you've all done a bunch of work on that as well too.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. Specifically, my co-founder and I both come from healthcare. In healthcare, data is your gold mine. It's the thing that you live off of. It changes your products, it changes your pricing. It has to be thought of as nimble quarterly review. And it's funny, coming into other domains, it's like everyone is just realizing how necessary real-time information is, especially because COVID is changing the profile of your customer. It's changing the profile of what's available. I just had to look for what t-shirts we could find for our launch party, and we really could only find 7. And so, it's this time in which those core skills, and particularly in tech, the data architecture really matters. And from an investor point of view, when I look at companies, I think about the 3 S's. I think, is it synergistic with what I've already invested in? Is it solving a real life problem? But most importantly, is it sustainable? Meaning the revenue stream can build off of what they've done today and what they can do tomorrow. And in the doing tomorrow, it's always data. It's, can they build a recommender algorithm? Can they start creating subscription models? And all of that requires that fundamental core infrastructure of knowing your client and building feedback loops where data can be captured ongoing.
Absolutely. All right, Jerisa, I think, something that's interesting that came up when you and I had a conversation is that you, from a communication standpoint, have kind of been on both sides. You were formerly a tech journalist and have a lot of experience in storytelling from that perspective. Can you talk to us a little bit about, again, your experience as a tech journalist, what you saw the importance of communications and founders needing to communicate, and how you're learning from that experience, now that you're a founder yourself?
Yes, I can. And I wish I had more hours in the day to do what I did on the other side of the table. But being a tech journalist, and I understand, I understand how important it is to have the right footprint out in the world, to have the right story out in the world. So I understand why companies gravitate towards wanting to get their story out and wanting it to be in like one of the biggest publications as soon as possible. But they also understand that there's a lot of other people pitching every single day. There's a lot of people in their space. And so you really have to be able to present a story that is different. Even if you're in, like myself, a crowded market, I have a lot of competitors, but how do you stand out? Is it the founder that makes you stand out? Is it something that you've done way different from someone else? Is it a thought process? Is it a customer experience process, which, that's part of our story that we always we integrate, because customer experience is such a huge thing right now. How do people experience your technology, your platform? You have to find that angle that sticks out, and it can't just be we're launching next week. So are 50 other companies. So, what makes you special, and grabbing that writer or that columnist, getting their attention. Also, one thing that gets left out a lot of times is relationship. That's a huge thing. that will get you into so many doors. Connecting with journalists and people who are consistently, even if they're writing on Medium, honestly, anyone who is putting out consistent content, how can you start building a relationship before you actually need them? I had a publicist reach out to me years ago, and now she's like my very close friend. But you have to start making those relationships. And how can your pitch come off as personable? Sometimes you're just getting a pitch and it's like, hey, this is what this CEO is doing. Do you want to talk to them? Not really. Like, why?
Thanks.
Why? So, just paying attention to creating that angle that's going to be slightly different, even if you're in a crowded market. Building that relationship, treating that person like, they are an actual person, not just someone you want to get something from and be transactional. Because what you have to understand is that, yes, you may be launching, but there are going to be other milestones that you have. And if you build that relationship correctly, every time you have a milestone, you'll have that person who will want to tell your story. And then the part about telling your story, and I think, Jay and Vanessa did such a great job, is, we get boggled down into the details, but what really comes across is your heart and like your why and why you are doing it and who are you helping. Those are the things that are meaningful to people when they read. We want to help small retailers as well as medium size and enterprise, but the small businesses are the heart of our company. Of our country. They're the heart of our country. And so you have to figure out, like, what is that heart story that you want to tell that's going to grab their attention? So it's beyond the details. It's beyond my technology is great. It's beyond we have 1,000 users or we just raised $1 million. All of those things are great, but it's a different thing when we say, talk about Jay's company and how he's helping people, and Vanessa, how she's helping people. That's a different story, and people are going to be willing to tell it.
Man, I love that. In fact, I just took minority founders on a retreat. We went to the Hamptons. These are predominantly minorities who come from poverty and are now entrepreneurs. These are all companies I invest in. And the hardest thing about the journey is actually opening back up and being vulnerable. So when you say tell your story, I love that. I hear that, but I also acknowledge that for people that have actually traveled that distance, it is hard to open up about growing up, 5 of you in a 2-bedroom apartment, never having owned a bed until going to college. Those stories are hard to open up and share. And I echo that it is so badly needed that people who have exhibited overcoming challenges talk about the challenge part. Mm-hmm. And invest that story that way, because they also happen to lead companies that way. Those same founders are the first ones to come up with employee stock pools. They're the first ones to be proud of having given a payroll so that a woman could have a job or an apartment for the first time. They reinvest into their community. We, in my circle, call it people like us. People that, yes, they want to have revenue cycles that mean something, but what they want those profits to come back and change their communities, their families. And so, thank you for bringing that up. And I also, for anybody in this crowd, I also recognize it's hard to do that.
Yeah, to pick up on that again, I think to bring back to this idea of lived and learned experience, that's the lived experience that no one else can compare. Your lived experience is what allows you to be the business leader that can develop these products, understand these audiences. And that's so powerful. The formula that actually Hotwire has taught us is 75% why, 25% what when you're telling these stories. And you can't lose track of the what, but that what's got to be connected to your why in a really authentic, powerful, meaningful way. I also just want to say, Jeressa and Vanessa, as women of color, as a white man who works with a lot of leaders of color, I also want to be really sensitive to the vulnerability and asking people to be step on that stage. And how do we create a safe container for people to tell their stories where they are authentic and safe, and we're not asking people to share things that are inappropriate and don't tokenize them. So I think there's also some sensitivity there that I'm always really aware of with my own lived experience. And I'm sure Vanessa and Jeressa, you guys have experience in how you create that safe container as well.
I'm just learning how to create that safe container because, you know, the person that I am now with the suit and the ability to jump on a plane and go somewhere, that's not who I was 5-10 years ago. And so in creating a safe container now, in the position I'm at now, what I have truly realized is that no one of us can do it alone. Mm-hmm. It is the ability to cultivate your network such that people in your network reflect the world you want it to be. So younger, lower income, older, more seasoned, domains outside of your comfort zone. And in that finding of that cultivated network, and this is what I call people like us or PLUs, then you reflect back the voice of that vision. And oftentimes you're able to solve some problems together, like, who's the best accounting you're using? Let's share some of that service. How about a fractional CFO that can help all of us? You know, all those communities, especially for minority founders, are lifeblood sustaining. Otherwise, we're crying by ourselves in the bathroom, just so you know.
No, I think these are all great points. And I think, Teresa, were you going to add something there as well?
Just a little bit. I will say I'm also learning too. But I also, every day that I wake up, I feel the huge responsibility to make sure that the women in my company have a voice, but not only just have a voice, but are free to use it. And it's my duty. I mean, I'm working in a very male-dominated industry. I have men that work on my team. And luckily, you know, they also support that as well. So it is literally my duty to make sure that that as I work in my company, that they also they contribute their own story, right? Because then collectively, Go Fly has a beautiful story to offer and to tell. So I can tell the story about, you know, and most of my team are minorities. I get to tell their stories by the services we offer. You can see it, the services we offer, the vibe we have, the customer service that we give our clients. It's young, it's urban, it's we can be women focused, you know, speaking to some of our retailers, a lot of them are brands for women. So it only makes sense for us to be able to, you know, I've learned that we're able to talk a different language that they weren't used to before, because I am a woman who loves clothing, by the way, and fashion and beauty and all of that. And so we can have a different kind of dialogue. But yeah, absolutely. I feel completely honored to be able to be the one leading the women on my team. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you touch on something interesting too. Obviously, authenticity in kind of communications and that storytelling is really key. You know, and also I think, Vanessa, we talked a little bit about, you know, really believing in what you're doing. And so a lot of that, what you're, you know, you just touched on a little bit too, Jeressa, I think emphasizes that, you know, bringing the authenticity of the culture that you're building and how that's playing out in kind of the communications with across all different audiences, whether it's, you know, media or your customers, to your point too, see kind of, you know, the people and their stories that are working at your companies as well. Vanessa, one of the things that you touched on a little bit earlier too was just kind of the wide range of you know, women that you're communicating with and that mentor, you know, applies to. And, you know, can you talk maybe a little bit about challenges that presents when you have such a wide audience and how you think about, you know, crafting your message in a way that's going to, you know, resonate with the most people who can benefit from the community?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So, you know, in typical tech fashion, we built a flywheel. But what that really means is we dug in and got to know the challenges of each and every segment today, right now. There's a lot of media going on right now around how women have left the workforce. I'm a mom of 3. I certainly felt like a prison warden during times, working, making sure everyone was online, making sure school was still happening. But everyone experienced the pandemic differently. Certainly as women, we're the caregivers to our older parents, to our children. We hold on to the purse strings. We make the shopping choices. We've all had to stretch like none of us have had to stretch before over these past 2 years. I lost my own father to COVID. Life has been different permanently. And I think that unfortunately the story has not yet been told as to how it has been different to who. And so for instance, millennial women, they're thinking about reproductive health in a way that they've never thought about. Is it time now to have a baby? There's a lot of cool articles in New York about how ballet dancers are getting pregnant because they're not out there training day in, day out. There's this moment in time in which we all get to redefine ourselves. The one that really captured me and that I didn't quite realize is, as we talk to different segments across our flywheel, the entrepreneurs are just exciting the hell out of me, particularly as a Latina. I have never seen so many Latina founded companies. This is like a revolution is happening right now. And I'm thrilled and excited because that means social mobility in a way that doesn't happen if you just work hard and you go to college and you get the job they tell you to get. This is truly transformational to a generation. The other one that excites me is the women over 50. As we were talking, 20% of our women right now are going through menopause. Heads up. 20% of our women right now feel invisible. I mean, talk about an unutilized resource of women who have had to live through more challenges than any of us can ever imagine. So when I think about how our particular platform is built to bring in all the women, it is exactly to unlock the potential that these women communicate based on shared lived experience for the need of advancing each other. They are absolutely the ones that need to be communicating. And, most tech, unfortunately, has been built off this bias and this discrimination that says, oh, one African-American woman should talk to another African-American woman. I get matched with Latinos all the time. I think people think I know every Latino in the country. I don't. But, when you build a platform that actually acknowledges a woman's lived experience and the potential to miss out opportunity, then suddenly you can connect the dots between a woman who has overcome that particular stage of life and another woman who needs that. And that kind of needs-based matching is not built on bias or discrimination. It's actually built on intersectionality that we all need. So, I'm thrilled. This is exactly what we wanted to do. We did leave healthcare positions for this in a time where health tech was growing and booming because, this is, in our mind, the problem we need to solve now. How do we unlock women's potential, not just to return to a market, but to redefine themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. There is just even everything that you've touched on too, just a lot of different, channels and different kind of trends and aspects to think about there. Jay, I wanted to ask you, I think through the work that Full Circle Fund has done, a lot of the work that you're doing is helping, corporations and nonprofits, but it's a lot of the work you're doing is helping them communicate to their various stakeholders as well too. And so can you talk just a little bit about, how you're doing that and kind of the programs and, challenges that you see there too?
Yeah, for sure. And first of all, Vanessa, I love the transfer. I don't know if you saw me. Let's do it.
I did, but we're not a nonprofit.
I know, but it's the energy is just there, and there's transformation happening, and there's a lot of bad stuff happening in this world, and there's a lot of really beautiful things that are coming out of that. And I love the inspiration that you're both bringing there. So thank you. So yeah, a lot of the companies that we work with they're really company. They're like corporations. They're often public companies, but they often started out as like tech startups, right? And they went through the early stages of an idea, a founder with an idea, then they got some angel funding and then some long-term funding. And these companies, what they've done that's really differentiates them is they built social impact into the core of their business. It's built into the mission of their organization, and it's been there for a long time. And that's difficult. We hear from our startup founders all the time. It's really difficult to do that when you're VC backed, right? Because the VC is, it's profit or bust, right? They don't really want to hear about the social impact. But if you can ingrain that early on, one of the most important stakeholders that companies are dealing with is employees. We live in the Bay Area here, and there's a war on employees and attrition. You want to get the most high quality employees, you want to keep them on board for as long as possible. You want to grow them within your company, right? And there's so many options, especially now more than ever. So one of the things that Full Circle Fund really does is, over the past 2 years, we call it like the triple pandemic of COVID, the Black Lives Matter movement in the Bay Area, all the climate change, global warming, everything else that's happening. Companies been asked to take this outsourced responsibility to move the needle on DEI, ESG, learning and development, and they often only have 1 or 2 employees managing all of this suite of needs that the company needs to move forward on. And the employees are expecting a lot. This stakeholder group of employees are expecting a lot from the company to live their values, not just write values on the wall or put it in the employee manual, but how do they actually show up so that the employees will stay there? And so what Full Circle Fund does is we come in and we give these programs. The Power and Privilege training is one example of that, but we give these programs for the leaders of the companies to put their money where their mouth is and their actions where their mouth is, and say, we are going to show up, we are going to work side by side with local nonprofits. We're going to try to understand our own individual power and identity and privilege that we bring to the table, so that not only so we can support those nonprofits, but so we can change our behavior as leaders at these companies. And we can change the way we resource and fund the work within these companies that our employees are asking us to fund. And when we tell our employees to go do beach cleanups or go work at the soup kitchen, we know that there's other opportunities that we can go beyond that, where we really roll up our sleeves and use our skills and our money and our talent in a more effective way to support these amazing organizations. So this, really living your values like that shows your employees that it's a company that believes in their mission beyond just the profit. It believes in the people and the people they're serving and the way they're addressing community, and it helps companies keep employees long term. So obviously we center this around the real reason is to support these nonprofits and the amazing work they're doing, but peripherally these organizations, these companies become more valuable in the employee attrition marketplace, which is a huge one. And I know something that a lot of founders are thinking about. How do you attract the right employees, keep them on board? So just think about that as you're going forward. How do you really live your values? How do you push back against some of those VC funding challenges and make sure that's a part of your company from the very beginning and always grow with it?
I think, Jerisa, you talked about this a little bit at the beginning, but storytelling, and especially I think over the past year for you in a highly competitive space, I was wondering if you could share a little bit more about your approach to marketing and communications with your various audiences and stakeholders, given kind of the highly competitive space that you were in this past year and a half.
Well, I can say, being in HIPP has really opened my eyes onto how we can better communicate to our audience, because we weren't doing really much at all. We weren't doing any marketing at all, which is why this was such a great opportunity for us. But also just understanding that speaking to a retailer is going to be different than speaking directly to the shopper. They both, we have a two-sided marketplace, and they both have very, very different needs. How do we present value to them both, and when we present that value, how do we communicate in the way that they see and hear us, and that we can gain visibility? And so we're actually learning that right now through this cohort. We're learning how to communicate what is our value, because it's we're in, again, that growth phase of a startup, and you're moving so quickly, and you're trying to get the right people on your team, and you know what your value is, because the retailers are obviously coming and they're paying, but it's how do you communicate that, right? How do you make it clear to them, because our space is so oversaturated, how do we get it to them quickly where they can see, okay, these are their values, and this is why I should choose this company, and these people in this industry are very busy. They don't have time to, read a long email or anything like that. It has to be very, very clear to them. And so, again, we're learning how to make that message to them clear and to get it to them quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I know, Vanessa, one of the other audiences that we've talked a little bit about too is that VC and investor audience, and the role that, communications and some of the work that you've done with the companies that you work with. Can you talk a little bit about how you've, what role that communications plays in funding, how important that is, and kind of a little bit about the work that you've done with some of the companies that you work with? Yeah,
and just to tie back to something that Teresa was saying about how you communicate to these different audiences and learn about them. One thing that I didn't quite realize until about 5 years ago was how important an echo chamber was. Not that you're actually doing the communicating, that everyone else is communicating on your behalf. Right. In other words, like your community is your brand ambassadors. And that plays out into government being your brand ambassador, marketing competitions being your brand ambassador, the CBOs, the community-based organizations in your neighborhood being your brand ambassador. And now in this new really cool time where we're all digital, the influencers being your brand ambassadors. And so there is a cool company that we should talk about later. But all of these are for the purpose of having others describe the value that they have from your product, from your service for you. So for instance, look Mentor up in a year, because we will absolutely already have the stories of how people's lives have been changed. We're going to be having that story publicly in a few weeks based on this just being the reality of our community and the mentors having changed the life of those around us. From a VC perspective, both having raised money for health tech companies in the past and now being an angel investor, that connects to value of your organization. In other words, valuing a company pre-IPO is a little bit of an art more than a science. And so having a great product is wonderful. Having a product that everybody else says is great is better. Mm-hmm. So from a valuation perspective, when you're doing comps, you go from being compared to MySpace to Facebook, and so that ability to do that for us, yes, Hotwire was absolutely part of our echo chamber for Mentor. So was the Black Ambition Prize that Pharrell launched. We were finalists this year. It propelled us into a new category. And there were a few that we didn't make that are still out there publicly. And of course, we're going to be aiming at all of these marketing opportunities in 2021 and 2022. Urge everyone to do the same. Venture capital. So SEC just issued a report April of this past year. They do it kind of a state of the state every year. They talked about how only 23% of VC-backed founders are Hispanic, African-American, Middle Eastern, Asian. And I'm like, oh man, that's all of us fitting into 23% of the funds flowing out in the market. That means that all of the rest of the money went elsewhere. And we are essentially competing for this sliver more and more through ESG carve-outs or a section of a portfolio. Venture capital is aiming to create a milestone of funding 30% of their portfolio going to minority-backed funders. So if you went to Stanford, Harvard, Yale, Northwestern, you have a pretty good shot of reaching through that network of people around you to do that. If you did not, where do you bridge the gap? Right. And so, that coupled with the fact that also only 3% of venture capital dollars went to sole woman founders or 2 women co-founders. I said 3%. 3. Oh, trying to do the magic on the computer. That means we're double whammied. So, the very personal story about why my co-founder and I were able to do this and leave an industry is because we financially had gotten to the point that we were privileged to do so. Mm-hmm. And that is not everybody's story. That is what specifically Mentor is trying to shore up, because this is a trickle down effect. According to the Center for Talent Innovation, founders hire people that look like them, that act like them, that are their quote unquote protege. The statistic is 71% invested in people who are junior to them, of the same gender, of the same race, from the same background. So in a world in which we are not addressing the fact that minority founders cannot grow, cannot scale beyond a region, we won't take advantage of this moment in time where we are having amazing talent be brave enough to be entrepreneurs for the first time. And so that scalability, the venture capital backed funding, changes the way a whole generation could think about what a leader looks like. Mm-hmm. To me, this is mind blowing. And, a few years ago, my little 10 grand checks helped seed some companies that are now huge. And I urge everyone, as you think about how you grow, if you can grow as an activist investor, you're part of the solution. If you can grow and change your venture capital percentages, so it's not just 30%, so maybe it's 60%, you're part of the solution. If you're a minority founder who can couple up with other minority founders and share resources like fractional CFOs, accountants, infrastructure that's necessary, you're part of the solution. And so we are really just building the digital bridge so that these pieces can come together and we can create this moment in time where there's a generation centered on impact.
That's great. Jay or Teresa, I just wanted to give you guys a chance to add or kind of react, build on anything Vanessa said.
I just want to add that these people that have decided to jump into entrepreneurship due to the pandemic, maybe they were laid off, they probably were not happy with their jobs anyway, and now they've gotten the courage to start a company, to really go forward after an idea. Just because they don't have a track record does not mean they cannot make an impact in tech, in whatever space they decided to be in. And I just want to encourage, if there's anyone listening and you still haven't pulled the trigger on your idea, definitely do it. There's a lot of resources now that may not have been available before, or you probably didn't even know were out there. I think that's also one of the things that have held back some of our Black and brown founders, is that they don't even know what resources are out there. So people like Jay and Vanessa and other companies, knowing that the resources exist is one of the things. If you don't know about venture capital, there are plenty of people that are, thought leaders that are out there on Instagram. You can look it up. Like, there are resources out there that you can be able to put together a business plan, put together a marketing campaign. All of the resources are out there. So if anybody's listening, please, please, please start that business. There are plenty of people out here who can help you.
And more are coming. Just for the record, the rebuilding funds that are coming through Congress right now will add more. But what has already happened, the SBA has opened up 20 women's business centers around the country, one including our new home state of Savannah, Georgia, that not just help you find funds, they help you navigate and do your business plans and find your community and add more SCORE mentorships and navigate you through whether you should be looking for private funds, whether you should be looking for loans, and of course, organizations like Jay's, which I can't wait to learn more about as well.
And I'll also just say quickly, there's I've spent my entire career thinking about community building and grassroots community building, and at Full Circle Fund, we're really trying to think about it as like a bottoms up and top down approach, understanding that there's a lot of power at the top, and we need to change behavior of people that own that power and resources, which is dollars, time, network, expertise, ownerships of P&Ls and different budgets, right? And so our role is really to get the leaders at these companies to change the way they think about investment. And it's not just philanthropic investment. So there's another sort of like, this is a little wonky, I won't go too far into it, but loophole called impact investing. And now donor advised funds, which is where a lot of philanthropists put their money, donor advised funds can be directed towards impact investing opportunities. So it doesn't just have to go to 501c3 nonprofits. You can also put them into impact investing. So it's another, like you said, Vanessa and Jerissa, it's another avenue to get more money into the hands of, business leaders of all sorts of different backgrounds. But definitely check those routes out as well.
I think there's been a lot that you all have shared in terms of tips and advice and resources. Being in marketing and communications shouldn't say this, but that's way more important than the work that we're doing from that perspective. But I think it might be nice to hear from each one of you, just knowing that, especially for a lot of founders with limited time and resources, and being really focused on growing and scaling your business at this point. How should companies be thinking about what to focus on from a communication standpoint when they have such limited resources?
I can share a quick experience from my background. Is the key word there is focus.
Mm-hmm.
Like what differentiates you? What are your core products or product? And how do you build that flywheel? What do you start with for that flywheel? And I think we hear so often, we get entrepreneurs that come to us and say, we do these 12 things. And we're like, great, which one do you do better than anyone else?
Right.
Where do you start? What are you really proud of? And I think that also speaks to that lived experience, right? What can you say you understand as the leader of this company better than anyone else, and will differentiate you in the market? So stay focused, focus on what you know, and just nail that one.
For me, it's the 3 S's. It goes back to synergy, solvability, sustainability. Synergy, are you reacting to the landscape you're in? Do you know there's a pandemic going on? Is there something that matches the rest of the landscape, and how do you just make the obvious really obvious through communication? How you're solving the problem, AKA your differentiation, but also how do you know it's going to work? And sustainability. In other words, I don't actually mind if you have 12 ideas, so long as your roadmap builds upon each other. And so that first product that you're going to launch really well and get a feedback loop on and maybe test out for a period of 16 to 18 months will ultimately get you enough data to get your next product on the roadmap of what you're looking to do. So I think for me, it's the communication of that and helping founders see the sequence of when to communicate and why. I think that's honestly, Kelsey, one of the best things you guys could be doing.
I would say, as a company that is lightly funded, we haven't done VC yet, but we are on our way. Lightly funded, bootstrapped for over a year. We market what brings in revenue, because we are an operations heavy company. And so whatever those services are, those are the first things that we're going to be communicating and marketing, because we need it to be a revenue driver for us right now. And so I would say, if you're a company like us that needs to rely on your own revenue, what are those services, 1 or 2, or however many, that's going to bring in revenue for you.
Wanted to go to, in our last couple of minutes, one of the questions that just came through in the chat here. So the question is, how do you recommend a company started by a non-minority founder grow their team so they don't have that protege effect, but also don't come off like you're tokenizing someone's background, especially in a COVID world where meeting new people is difficult?
Digital media. It's so funny. I've started advising a couple of fun groups on Instagram. Who the hell knew that would happen? Latinos in tech. Depending what your domain is, there's become this grassroots efforts in Black and brown communities to organize themselves so that people don't say, hey, I don't know how to access, a coder who has a different background than, the quintessential Stanford coder. I would literally Google the words in Instagram of the group that you're trying to find, whether it's tech, whether it's clinical. There are also specifically HR created platforms that have happened during the pandemic that are building up a pipeline of particular Black and brown backgrounds. And that's across everything, across clinical, across tech. Those are the big ones that I've seen. But we'll reach out to you separately with that name because don't need to endorse in front of everyone.
I think Rachel, one of the people in the audience, that's actually a really good idea. There are so many community organizations that right now we have an intern that is from a community organization of underrepresented high schoolers. We have an intern that's been working with us. He was super excited to work with us. I'm the first CEO woman that he's ever seen in his life, which is kind of like, wow, really? And it was like, wow, okay, that's a huge responsibility as well. But I would say also being authentic when you're building your team. And, I'm looking for your talent. I'm looking for, do you fit, not fit, but like what do you bring to the team so that we can create the culture that, we want to have. So it's being authentic and finding people. And also, again, like Vanessa said, it's looking for those people. If you want to have diversity, I think a company with diversity is a company that is bound to grow, to have different thought processes, to have different people from different backgrounds, to be able to contribute to a vision that you have is only going to serve you at the end of the day. And so it's being authentic and finding those people. I think it won't come off as, tokenism, but that you genuinely want them to be part of your team.
I love this new question that just popped on the board. How should different weird business models pitch? I'm creating a rideshare co-op, so not a nonprofit, but also not the type of thing that people want to invest in since our goal isn't profit so much as sustainability. I think that you're talking to a group of weird, different leaders, so you brought your question to the right place. I just think that you pitch it in the most logical way. So your rideshare co-op is about democratizing access to rides. And that makes sense from a business model. And you just run through the details of your numbers. That's my advice.
Yeah, don't get caught up in the only I and ROI being money, right? There's impact, so just think about how would you change the people that would be excited about whatever you're bringing to the table.
That was a good sentence.
I agree, because being rideshare logistics, we're kind of in that same space. And what I have noticed is that a lot of VCs, investors, they're over it because they've watched Uber, they've watched so many of these companies not be profitable. And so I would really focus on what makes you different, the sustainability, your why would people want to be part of this? And why does it fit with people right now versus, again, people pre-COVID? People are not just getting into Ubers like they were before. So what is that thought process? What is the change? I would focus on that because, I've heard this plenty of times that people are like, great idea, not interested in the space. I've already seen it. So now you have to take it from a different angle.
And the last tidbit is never underestimate the economy. Like, again, we're living in a world where money is getting tighter and tighter. So that concept of democratizing also means people's dollars stretch.